like wood.
Yeah, but it
cut it
can't.
out.
But it still has to have a way to like open it first. So like, I think it. I think that it's born with a little bit different beak, like it's deformed, and then it starts eating, like it says, it starts forming even more. But
Sounds like people have things to say, so you're gonna have to stand up or raise your hand, or why don't we have Abby? Abby, why don't you go ahead and pick somebody that you know probably has something to say in response?
Wait, what? Ew, you supposed to say your thing? Oh, for like, you can't, how did your beaks change when you're alive? Because it's not like Pokemon where you just grow to the next level.
So that's what you were saying.
I know. How do they just randomly change?
I don't know, by the way they eat and stuff. Yeah.
Can I allow Kevin to? Okay.
Like they can form by like eating their food that they eat.
okay.
They form their own beak.
But it still has to have a way first to get into it, otherwise it can't form. You know, like, it's not, so if it's born with a wide beak, how is it going to get to it in the first?
Yeah. How is it going to dig into the ground?
Mia?
Okay, well, I think like what Abby said, like, maybe one, like the mom is like, has like a normal beak, and then the dad might have a different beak than mom, and then if they have a baby bird, then she might come out with the mom's beak or the dad's beak, so they might come out with different.
Or it might be a combined version.
Yeah, like it might be like form like a combined with both of them, and then
Do you guys know how animals combine a version? If you have a male bird and a female bird, do you know how they combine that? Their genetics, their DNA? Okay, so life begins with a cell from the male and a cell from the female. Those two cells join, that DNA joins, combines, and comes up with a combination. That's why Alec has brown hair and blue eyes. That's why Haley's got brown hair and brown eyes.
You mean he has blonde hair?
Did I say brown?
Yeah.
Blonde hair. I meant blonde. Blonde and blue eyes. That's why Jory's got blonde hair and brown eyes. All of our combinations are different. Not only do those DNA, does that DNA determine the color of our hair or the color of our eyes, but it also determines the shape of our face, the shape of our teeth, the shape of our ears, okay? My husband's family, his grandfather on his mom's side had gigantic ears. I mean, and they stuck straight out. You know, the BFG kind of ears? They stuck straight out. Well, a lot of my husband's cousins have those same ears. My husband's ears, not so much. They're fairly what we would call pleasing to the eye. But some of his cousins have, okay? And the only reason that they have those is because of the way that the genetics mixed when they were two cells. Those two cells combined to one cell. And then, poof, you got a little baby. All of a sudden it's 8 cells, then it's 16, then it's 32, then it's 64, and all of a sudden, poof, you got a little baby with hands and birds with beaks and birds with talons. All the characteristics that their parents have are combined and brought into that baby. Now, think about August. Think about August.
Something went wrong with the stomach. That's what I'm talking about, though, like an August bird. So
An August bird. Something went, an August bird. Something went wrong inside, not the stomach, but inside that cell combination. When the father's sperm met the mother's egg, that combination of, I'm going to use the scientific terms, Braden, and you're going to be okay with it, okay? Because guess what? You have sperm like you wouldn't believe inside your body already, okay? And every girl in this room was born with all the eggs she'll ever need inside of her ovaries, always. And boys, you'll be making sperm the rest of your life, always, okay? So they're there. The combinations, your combinations are waiting. Okay? So when it's at that cellular level, something happened. Something happened to August, and that's what made his birth defects. Now, can a bird have birth defects?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Snacks.
When we lived on the farm, we actually had a calf that was born with 2 heads. So she had one neck. Yeah, it was pretty cool. She didn't survive. She had one neck. I knew something was wrong when I went in to help the mom. You use your hand and you go in to help the mom guide the baby's nose out. And if you get the baby's nose and the feet out, then everything else is a natural arc. Everything else gets delivered by the mom cow. If you take your hand and you go in there and you just find where that baby's head is and you can get those 2 little front hooves, you can help that mom greatly by having all those things lined up. Well, when I went in that day with my finger, I went along the side of that calf's head just like I would any other time, and you find their jawline, then you go down their neck and you find their little hoof, and then you find the other hoof doing the same thing, except her jawline, it was like going into a branch of a tree. There was another, I followed the other one, there was another calf's head, but there was no place between, it wasn't twins, it was connected. So we called the vet. The vet came out and did what's called a cesarean section, okay? Which, when my daughter was born, the doctor cut from this hip to this hip, okay, to get Katie out of my uterus, all right? So it sounds terrible, but you know, you're under anesthesia. It's called a C-section. A cesarean section is a C-section. So you're under anesthesia, and the doctor cuts your abdominal wall and your uterus where the baby is growing, and then brings the baby out and stitches everything up, and it's all good, okay? Well, the vet came and did that same thing for the calf that day, because there was no way a 2-headed calf was going to come out of the mother's birth canal. So once the baby was on the ground, we got both heads breathing. It was very odd. If I had a video camera at that time, I would have videotaped the whole thing. In those days, 30 years ago, we just didn't walk around. We didn't have a phone. We didn't have a phone to take pictures with. She did not survive because 2 heads were connected to one neck, and the calf could not keep those 2 heads up. I fed one neck, I fed one head. I don't think the other head had a viable place to feed. So it would have been amazing if we could have kept it alive. But because it was such a severe birth defect, we couldn't keep it alive.
Why didn't you guys just come up here and stitch that?
Well, because
She would have died then.
Abby, we thought about that, but the vet said that it shared one brain. The noses of the calf and the muzzle of the calf were together, but then where the calf's cheek, it had 2 ears, one on this side and one on this side, but the brain area was all together. So if we tried to separate them, we would have separated the brain, and you can't live with a half of the brain. The body needs both halves of the brain to function. But my whole reasoning for bringing that up is there is a chance, even in wildlife, that animals can be born with an August birth defect.
That's not a bird.
Okay. Say that again?
That's not a bird.
And not due to an injury, then that would be a birth defect. I've seen chickens having one full wing, and then another one looks like just a little bud of a wing. Birth defect. Okay? So, I'm going to pose to you guys, is it possible that those birds that adapted to their environments, is it possible that they, by some fluke thing, had babies that had a birth defect of some sort?
And then it could get to that food, and then it would form a little bit more, so it could get to the food.
Okay. How many people think that that would be a viable thing that could happen? Viable meaning likely. It could be possible. Okay. August's birth defects didn't really work out for him, right? People made fun of him. People were afraid of him. In the end, it kind of worked out, but it took a lot of work. Could a bird's birth defect work for them, Kevin? Could a bird who's got a really skinny beak when it's born, could that birth defect work for them? Given their environment, right? What if that bird with the really skinny beak was born on the island that only had fruits available to them that they needed a skinny beak to harvest? Would that be bad or would that be
Oh
good?
wait, no, the one that they yeah.
Would that be bad or would that be good? You guys say it out loud, bad or good?
Good.
That would be a good thing for that bird, right? Okay, so if that bird has a skinny beak, is there chances out of all the thousands of birds that could be on one island, is there a chance that another bird could be born with a birth defect? Just like that? Absolutely. If there's children that are born with birth defects every day in this country, there's many children that are born every day with birth defects. So the chances of birds having birth defects too, absolutely possible. Now, what if those two birds, those two little skinny beaked birds, survived really well? They could eat the seed because they had the tool, the beak, to get to that seed. What if they found each other and had babies?
Then it would be, yeah. And then it would just keep going until there's a whole like island full.
A whole island full of these skinny beaked birds. So then that birth defect isn't really a birth defect anymore. It's what we call an adaptation.
Yeah.
So they happened somehow, somewhere, the chances of their birth defect worked out for them because the environment that they were in, that birth defect worked really well for that environment, for a skinny beaked bird. Now, what if you had a birth defect and you had a huge beak?
Then you'd go to the other island.
Would you go to the other island?
Yeah.
No.
The other island.
Yep.
No, how do you win?
Now,
Yeah.
do you think birds are born and the mom and dad look at the baby that was born and they say, oh my gosh, you got a huge beak. You go to island C.
No.
Probably not. I don't think birds would take over the world if they had that much power. If they were that smart. So that big beaked bird would have to probably live on that island. Let's make sure, you guys pull out the maps of those three islands. Let's make sure that we're putting the right bird on the right island. That's another what you would call.
Because the skinny beak birds have the bugs.
The skinny beaked birds have the bugs? Okay. Mia.
He saw a bird with one wing. I saw a chicken with one.
See? And that's a birth defect too.
I've seen a cat that when I was because I went on one side to know that I wasn't there, and he wouldn't see me, so I went to the side with the eye and started running away from him.
Oh, here's another one for those people that were here with me in second grade. Remember the black and white cat that showed up and he had 6 toes on each?
Yes, I remember that.
Do you remember that?
Even though I wasn't in your class, I
Yep. He was on the playground and yeah. That little guy had more toes than what was needed. Birth defect. Now, yes, it's still all messed up, yes. But if that animal, if that cat needed those 6 toes for a reason, it wouldn't be a birth defect anymore, it'd be a very useful tool. Okay? Did you guys know that people, when they breed, oh you guys, you have it on your paper, on the back side of your,
No, that's a different paper.
gotcha. My fault.
That one.
Here.
Chapter 3.
You might not have it on the back side of your paper, and it's coming up really funky on drive for you, so look, there. Okay? All right. So, when all those parent birds went out to all of those different islands, they all got blown by the same hurricane, they all came from the same place. All the parent birds had what it took to survive on the mainland, but then when they got out to those islands, they didn't necessarily have what it took to survive, but their babies did. Because of the genetic variation, okay, those genes that the parents, the mom and the dad